Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Hines here with my friends from Just Among Friends, Mike Isley and Ann Stacy, and we are here with you today with another episode. We are excited to welcome back our friend Ruth Isaac from Belgium. She's in Brussels, and she was with us previously, and this is a follow-up. We wanted to interview her again because she has so much to say and share with our audience of Christians and Jews. It is amazing the work that Ruth is doing. Before we get started with you, Ruth, I want to just do a couple of opening remarks and shout out to our sponsors. So give me a second to do a screen share. Okay, here we go. So our sponsors are, like I was saying, my friend Ann Stacy. She has TexansForASafeIsrael.org, Mike Isley, who has TexansForIsrael.com, and myself, ATasteofIsrael.com. Each of us have our own independent interests in supporting Israel and the Jewish people. So I invite you to check out our websites and see the work that we're doing. And then this Just Among Friends is a new initiative where we've come together and joined forces to enlarge our circle of friends based on our shared Judeo-Christian values. We seek no imposing our theology. We just want to build friendships and enlarge this circle of amazing friends that have enriched our lives beyond compare. The other shout out I want to give is our speaker, back to Ruth. So this is Ruth Isaac's nonprofit, Shema Institute. Ruth is the co-founder of the Shema Institute. She's also head of the EU relations at the EJA Jewish Association. This is the mission of her nonprofit, the Shema Institute. It is advocating for human rights, freedom of speech, and values in society. Please take a screenshot of this so you can donate to her link. She is a lone soldier, so to speak, where she's at and what she's doing, and she needs all the support we can give her. It is amazing the work you're doing, Ruth, on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. So welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Amazing to be with you.
Thank you. Wonderful. So last time we talked, a lot. We heard about how you got to where you are now, your beginnings, the influence that your mom had on you, and your perspective of the world, and specifically Israel and the Jewish people. It's a phenomenal story to hear how she impacted you, and how that led you from Greece to where you live now in Brussels, and the work you're doing. We talked about, anti-Semitism a little bit and what's going on in Europe in our previous conversation. And we also talked about a phrase that I questioned you about. I mean, I just put it out there, and something you said sparked a thought in my mind that I have never had before. And so I thought we could start there today with this interview. Good. Okay. That phrase is Christian Zionist. So before our interview last time, I've always called myself a Christian Zionist, not only a Christian Zionist, but a proud Christian Zionist. I wore that as a badge of honor. But you made a remark that I wanted to kind of do a deep dive into. And you said, labels have different meanings based on different perspectives. And you said Christian Zionist is one of those labels, can have a different meaning. And so I felt there might have been a negative connotation to that label somewhere. And I wanted you to kind of talk more about that and what you meant by that. So tell us more.
Okay, so again, thank you. And just in terms of introduction, I'm just going to say again, because you gave a very long introduction about me, a very kind one. And I just want to say that in effect, I'm a lobbyist here. This is why I'm here in Brussels. I lobby on behalf of Jewish issues and Israel. And I want to say also that in Europe, we have a lot of very good friends for Israel. Believe it or not all of Europe is anti-Semitic. We have wonderful politicians and individuals and members of the public, and obviously pastors, churches, and so forth, who are very much interested, and they're really doing an excellent work. So this is why I'm here. In terms of Christian Zionism, I wanted to say that the Bible basically doesn't, the word Christian is it was a Christian Zionist. Okay, so the word Zionist is a biblical word because the Bible calls Zion the holy place. But the word Christian is not necessarily something that you can say is biblical. It was a term that it was given to the early disciples as a way of differentiating them, but it wasn't a biblical term. That was the distinction, first of all, that I made. Secondly, I think you also had a wonderful pastor earlier in your program, and he spoke about the issue of how the translators were the translators were very biased, right? Today we talk about fake news and manufacturing the words, how they're using words which they don't mean what they used to mean. Yeah. So the word Christian, in effect, and it was just a label that was given. And the word before that, for example, they will call us, and if you see Aramaic or Middle Eastern Christians, to this day, they're using that word N, which is Nazarenes, and they're using the Arabic letter for that. But my point is that Christian is not necessarily a biblical term, but definitely Zion is a biblical term. And you cannot say that you are a Christian, if you like, unless you can say that you are a Zionist, because the whole Bible, the whole story is about Zion. And I don't see how you can possibly take out from your faith Zion out. So that was my first point, I think, that I made. The other thing, if I can expand a little bit, the other thing I wanted to say is that today, when people are called Christian Zionists, really, if it's called from people who think what we're doing is wrong, in effect, they're just trying to paint us as these fanatical people or almost like naive in what we're doing. But again, I'm just going to point out that this is to defend the word Zion and to want to expand what Zion means is a biblical mandate. You cannot read the Testament or the covenant if you don't understand that this is what the original covenant was about. It was about Zion, and about Zion not only in the old times, but also in terms of the future, that Zion is the center where the Bible says that the prophecies will be fulfilled, where Zion will be a light unto the nations, and it will be flowing to, and also about the law of Zion, how it will be flowing to other nations.
Amazing. And that, if I could, if there was like a description of, describing the term Zionist, that is the description, that is the definition, and that is so much more clear, so much more aligned with Judeo-Christian values, or Judeo values that, like you said, that's where it started. That's what the Bible talks about. So
I assume you're aware that the BDS movement, which is the Boycott Israel movement and so forth, they are trying to, and specifically, they were even 40 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, there were specific campaigns, and these were political campaigns to paint Zionism as racist. These were words: Zionism is racist. It was an accusation inside the UN specifically, and a lot of work had to happen to basically let people know that Zionism is not about racism. It's not about excluding anyone. Zionism is about giving to the world something. And it is about the Judeo-Christian values, about the commandments, the 10 commandments, for example. Today, we're saying just a very simple thing. It is unlawful in most Western countries to marry your sister or your brother. That is a Judeo-Christian value. That was like in Egypt or in other cultures, marriage within the family wasn't necessarily seen as a bad thing. It was about continuing the royal family. But in the Judeo-Christian world, yes, that is illegal. It's considered an abomination. It's considered. So in terms of the law or protection of women or freedom of speech, of any what we call today human rights, we wouldn't have human rights today if it wasn't for those Judeo-Christian values, which is in effect the biblical values. That's the Jewish values. And sometimes we say Judeo-Christian and because we want to include the word Christian inside, but again, it really means Jewish values.
That's right.
It's very, I think we really have to give, like the Bible says, you have to give honor where honor is due, So it's very much the Jewish values or the biblical values.
Very interesting. And I think that's a very, very strong point we need to stop and really highlight right here, that it is a very important distinction to make and to really give credit, like you said, where credit is due, to echo what you're saying. It is a Jewish value. And it's interesting, a conversation comes to my mind I had recently with a Jewish friend here where I live. And one day I was just telling her how much I was so impressed with the Jewish values of family and just the high morals and, just the whole, what Judaism teaches. And I said, before I told her that, I just said, I have such high respect for the Jewish people. And I so wish I was Jewish or was raised like with those. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, your values and the value system, you know. So yes, everything, thank you for saying that. My point is that is an important distinction, and we do need to give credit where credit is due. We're great. Those values have enriched my life. I know that for sure. Let's take that and go a little step further for people who love Jewish values, like we're talking about, but even more so, people who may not be fully aware yet on that level, but they love Israel. I had an email recently from someone who said, I'm a Christian who loves Israel. How can I be a part of this? So are there different levels, so to speak, of being pro-Israel? Because that's kind of, it's a broad term.
I agree. And I'm just going to say some things that maybe is going to offend our audience, but my intention is not to offend. My intention is just to clarify certain things. So first of all, when you say you love someone, the Bible says that secret love or hidden love is worse than open hate. Right?
Wow.
So a lot of people say they love Israel, but it's nowhere, like they're nowhere to be seen. So unfortunately, for example, when demonization, real demonization of Jewish people and of Israel as a whole, because Jewish people in effect is Israel. That's what they are. The term, I'm just going to do another little segment here. The word Israel, before Israel today existed as a nation 100 years ago, or sorry, 200 years ago, or just to give an example, Hitler, for example, he lived before Israel was created, and he was referring to Israel, meaning the Jewish people. This is 2,000 years, the Jewish people not having a nation, not called Israel, but he was referring to Israel as being the nation, the people of 200 years before that. Karl Marx, when he was referring to the Jewish people, again, he said the famous phrase of the jealous God of Israel is the love of money, basically. So as you can see, traditionally, when people, or, we're using the word Jewish in English, but in other languages, French and Dutch and Spanish, to this day, instead of saying the Jewish community of Madrid, for example, or the Jewish community of Brussels, in French, do you know what word they use? Instead of saying the Jewish community of Brussels, they say, in effect, word for word in French and in Spanish, it will be the Israelite community of Brussels, so the Israelite community of. So the word Israel, of them being acknowledged or known for as Israelites, it still exists to this day. So I'm using the word. I just want to point out that I'm saying Israel and Jewish people, and I mean the same thing, because this is in effect what people mean. When there is anti-Semitic attacks, or when people demonize Israel, you have 20% of the people in Israel today being non-Jewish. But when people are demonizing Israel and calling Israel an apartheid and all these horrible things, they don't mean that 20%, which they're Arab or Christian. They really mean the Jewish people. So this is why I want to make it very clear. I'm referring to Jewish people in Israel as being one, because they are one.
That's right.
So to your question, I just want to say that a lot of people, they say they love Israel, they love the Jewish people, but they don't show their love towards in any way. I said to you in my last conversation how my mother tried to show that love, even though she didn't have the language, she didn't have anyone to even translate for her, but she found a way to express that love. And obviously give that love and that understanding to us, which later myself and my sisters were able to do something with that. So number one, if you love something, you have to defend it. When there is such a horrible demonization of Israel at the international court and the UN and the newspapers every single day, so the least that we can do is defend, or at least speak up. Many times my concern with the pastors is that they are really uncomfortable and they don't want to go into the political situation, and therefore they avoid the issue. So I explain to them that by doing so, you allow your congregation to be educated by the world.
Yes.
If you don't explain what Israel really means, the world is going to educate your people, and your people will think that Israel is this horrible Zionist entity and so forth that commits human rights violations. But if you explain, if you give to them the biblical understanding, and also the political is not a bad thing. We should not fear politics.
That's right.
So that's what I want to say about love. Some people love but don't show that love in any way because they don't want to offend anyone. Number two, the other main distinction I want to make is that there are people who love Israel, but they demonize part of Israel in the way that they refer to what is today known as Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, or the way that they refer to the settlements being, if it's okay with you, I just want to say very briefly.
Let's do that. I was going there next to the annexation big topic.
Yes, so if you say that you love Israel, if you say you love me, but you say yes, but part of Ruth, like half of Ruth, is the problem. Because there are anti-Semitic attacks against Ruth, or there are terrorist attacks against Ruth, or against the family of Ruth. But those anti-Semitic attacks, those terror attacks are bad, but part of Ruth is the problem, or part of Ruth is the obstacle to peace. That is demonization. You're demonizing settlements. When people keep on talking about settlements is a dehumanizing term, because you really need to be referring to settlements mean human beings, men, women, children, old people, young people that they chose to live somewhere. So by referring to them as settlers, many times my husband also refers to that. He says, I don't understand why even Jewish people use that word, settlers. What does settler mean? Like, you're not allowed, if you're in Europe or even in America, you're not allowed to demonize refugees. You're not allowed to demonize newcomers to the country, immigrants. Even if they're illegally in the country, you're not allowed to commit a terror attack against them. So I don't understand that when it comes to Judea and Samaria today, people have such an extremist, I call it extremist, because in the other day, I make the very controversial statement of saying that people today want Judea and Samaria to be Jew-free, just like Hitler wanted Germany to be. So that is my controversial statement. But when they're advocating so adamantly for Jewish people not to live in a place, and literally to make it a Jew-free place, I don't understand where that comes from, and why would they say that they love Israel? Israel doesn't reject its minority population. As I said, it has 20% of Arab and Christian population, Arab, Christian and Muslim, I mean. And it doesn't reject them. They're very, very proud of their minorities, and obviously including, I think they're called Ethiopian Jewish minorities. So, but if Israel was trying to get rid of every single minority and make it Arab free, that would be a concern. But so I don't understand why, when the other new state that they're trying to so adamantly to defend and to make sure that it exists, what is called the Palestinian state, if they're insisting that it has to be Jew-free, otherwise it's not Palestine, I don't understand which other nation on earth, definitely not America, definitely not European nation, is allowed to have a Jew-free state, is not allowed to have an Arab-free state as a prerequisite for existence. So I don't understand why, when it comes to the state, the new state, which they refer to as Palestine, I don't understand why they're insisting that it has to be settlement free, meaning Jew free, otherwise it's not Palestine. So in terms of love, I just wanted to say that you have to be very careful in your language and in the way that you refer to things, not to demonize innocent people.
It's so interesting because you said a lot, but it's very simple in the same token, by the same token, meaning it's just like any relationship. If you love someone, you're going to be careful how you speak about that person or to that person, or how you express your love to that person, or your, support. And so I think that's a great point for our listening audience, especially our Christian audience. If you say you love something, show it. Let's get busy. It's time to quit giving lip service. It's time to show our love for Israel and the Jewish people by supporting things in the land of the Jewish people. Our money, our time, our voices all must express that love. It's not enough to tell me that you love Israel. I agree. So that is the message for that part right there, for sure. So thank you for being so eloquent about explaining that, because it matters. It matters. And I'll tell you another question. The other thing I want to kind of, highlight, I guess, if you will, is the whole being Jew-free, the land being Jew-free. That is very, very, of course, disturbing. It's not a new thing. It's been around, but it's rising. The people that are pushing that narrative have certainly gained ground in the public sphere here in America, pushing for the stopping of annexation, which means, for those of you who are listening and you're not quite sure what we're talking about giving this is going to sound crazy, giving Jewish people permission to build their home in Israel, in the heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria. And if you've listened to any of our previous interviews, we've talked a lot, I guess, about Judea and Samaria and why that matters and where that's located, the biblical heartland of Israel. But could you imagine if I want to go build a house here in Texas and I had to have the international community's permission and blessing? Otherwise, I'm going to risk someone coming and attacking me physically, or attacking my business, attacking my house, or trying to prevent me from building a house in Texas. Even though I have the deed to the land, I paid the money, I've got the deed to the land, they're going to try to stop me. That is essentially what's going on in Israel, in Judea and Samaria. Many world leaders, including America's at the moment, not the previous administration, I'm talking about the Biden administration, has already said Israel needs to stop annexation of the settler movement. Essentially what they're saying is stop building Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria because we will cut off the aid. Well, number one, let me just say, America does not send aid to Israel. They send investment money. It's a business to business agreement where we make money on the sales of arms and equipment and everything, technology. We don't give aid to the Israelis, we give aid to the Palestinians. So that's a whole nother topic, which just makes my blood boil. But to your point is that, yes, I agree. We need to be very careful with the terminology that we use and stand with the Jewish people building their families in Judea and Samaria. So much to be working on. That's why I so admire the work that you're doing, because remind us, how many are on your team working for the Jewish people where you are at in Brussels?
In Brussels, a very small team, unfortunately.
Right. That's
yeah,
the point.
just normally it is me and one more colleague, but there is at least 3 or 4 organizations that they are working here, and so there are people, but not as busy or maybe as you would have wanted to be. And in the end of the day, it's definitely not about one individual. And no matter how many lobbyists exist, because in fact this is how they call me, it's not up to us to make. We would just advocate for something, but it's really up to every single government and every single politician and every single voter to make this issue important for them.
Absolutely. Well, my point was, and I knew it was a rhetorical question, so to speak, because I knew that you were very small in number where you're at. And that's my point. You know, it should not be that way, but look at what you're doing, and you're doing it in such with tenacity that the Jewish people have a great, I know they're grateful for the work you're doing, but it needs to be shouted from the mountaintops, because we don't despise small numbers. God uses small numbers to accomplish his work. We know that. Amazing, amazing. Ruth, we love you. You are incredible. The work you're doing, you have our respect. We give you a standing ovation from here in the States. We follow you on social media. We are paying attention to what you're doing, and we applaud you. Now to the, I guess, the final question, Mike, if you have any questions for her or anything after I'm done, please jump in. As far as conservatism, I guess I'm stumbling on that word, being a conservative, so to speak, in Europe, how is that going? Because this is going to lead people to where we're at now. This is normally the path. How is that going?
Okay, so again, people might find it strange to believe, but there are conservatives here in Europe. We are a very big group. Actually, the biggest political group in the European Parliament and in the European scene is actually the center right. It's just that the center right is quite compromised. It's almost like, let's say, in the Republican Party, how you have those who are more. Yes, I don't want to use that word, but you know what I mean.
Please use it.
Those, yeah, and then this is why later you had other groups like the Tea Party, for example, those who felt that the Republican Party was not as active. So we do exist. Conservative parties do exist, and the majority of the biggest European countries do have conservative governments. It's just that, unfortunately, I think the center has moved very much to the left. So nowadays, when people talk about conservatism, everything has been compromised. For every single value, it seems that we have accepted an anti-family and conservative value, unfortunately. But overall, I just want to say again that we need to stay positive, and we do exist, and we need to encourage one another. And it's very unfortunate, unfortunately, that between Europe and America, you have a lot of antagonism, obviously, and you have a lot of negative words being thrown back and forward. And I think that we should stay allies, and we should remember that we fight for the same values.
Yeah.
If I can say, Laurie, when I had Dennis Prager here, he obviously, Dennis Prager, this great guy, he was next to me and he was giving his speech, and he was just going on and on and on how bad Europe was. And I reminded him afterwards, I said in the panel, in my closing statement, that Dennis, you are from America and I'm here from Europe. I could not be more European. I have only lived in 3 European countries in my life. They're all in Europe. And basically, you and I, we believe in the same things. There's not even one position that we are different, So just remember that when you refer to Europe, you obviously refer to the political situation in Europe, but don't generalize about everyone. For example, the Obama administration or the Biden administration did not represent the total of the American people.
That's right.
So despite of how America used to vote under the Obama administration, for example, that doesn't mean that you, as an individual, Laurie, or the majority of the Republican Party agreed with the anti-Israel resolutions that America allows to happen during that time. So in the same way, so I'm asking for some grace from your listeners and to understand that Europe is a great field, is a very huge, we're talking about 500 million people, that we should not give up on them. Often, unfortunately, both my Israeli and my American friends tend to be very, very negative towards Europe. They always say things like, Europe is done for, Europe is dying, Europe is over, Europe is, and I'm like, no, actually, that's not true, Number one, when people like me exist, it means that we still have a fighting chance. We are willing, there are people who are willing to fight back. Unfortunately, they are disillusioned, a lot of them. You find that nowadays people even vote for very extremist right-wing parties because, or there is a rise of nationalism, but this is not always in a positive way, but this is only as a reaction because the center has moved so much to the left that people feel this is the only way to counteract it. So it is an opposition vote. It's not necessarily that it reflects the values, but definitely I want to say to your audience that conservative values do exist, and we should give them a little bit more hope, basically.
I appreciate that. That's a very, very important thing to note. And so we stand with you and your conservative friends in all of Europe, and Europe is not gone. Thank you for saying that. Mike, what do you say?
Laurie, I wanted to ask Ruth a question. Ruth, in today's world, truth, I just love everything you said, but I learned a few years ago that when I speak of my God, and I'm talking to a Muslim friend or even some Christians, I have to designate, I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I didn't think that was a big deal, but some of our liberal crazy friends, their God is not my God. So would you speak to that? Do you ever distinguish that to people, or you know what I'm saying? Do you ever talk about that?
Okay, my organization is called Shema, and obviously I think you do understand that Shema is that Jewish prayer, and it literally means
the Shema.
So really it means listen to God's voice. But the voice of God for me, yes, it is very much the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right. The covenant of God with Abraham was specifically that I will bless you, but it doesn't stop there. It says, and you will be a blessing. There's also another promise that God gave to Ishmael, and was that Ishmael was going to be this great nation, really numerous, which is true. God fulfilled his promise, but in his promise to Ismail, nowhere does it say that you will be a blessing to others. It just says that you're going to be big, and you're going to be numerous, and you're going to fight. Wonderful. So if you want to be part of a great big nation, you can call yourself an Ismailite if you want. But the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the way that we understand the covenant is specifically about you being a blessing to others and you reaching out to others. So yes, I do make that distinction. And with all the respect and love and towards everyone, sometimes people want to say that we believe in the same thing, and I don't necessarily agree. Even with my Christian friends, I remind them that many of the philosophies and many of the ideologies and many of the even practices that they have accepted today as Christian is actually quite pagan. They're not part of the original mandate, if you like.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great response. Great response. Thank you so much again for your time and your insight and sharing with us what you're doing. We are certainly all on this incredible path together, and we are of the same mind. Yes, thank you. We still have much work. You really opened up my thinking too on some things, so I really appreciate that, Ruth.
Lori, if I can say one last thing, I want to say again, like Pastor Mark, right? Said last time, he referred to, I'm originally from Greece, so I understand Greek. I read the Bible in Greek. The way that today, what it has been handed down, especially in the English translations, in the English world, there is a lot of anti-Semitism and a lot of replacement theology and a lot of doctrine, if you like, that has been given to us, even from the way that we read the Bible. So some things are very, very clear if you know the Bible, if you understand the original words. So I would encourage, I think this was also Pastor Mark's admonition, to make sure that we go back to the original words, and you can find the truth. It's just there. It's just that you need to do that little bit of work of going there. And I just want to say that it has been a blessing for me to work for the Jewish people, to advocate for them. You said all these wonderful things about me, but again, I want to say it is an honor. It's been a blessing for me. And I think this is the least that I can do, because as Europeans, as Christians, as whatever, as biblical minded or whatever you identify with, as a follower of this covenant of Abraham, because I think this is how I identify myself, not even as a Christian. I identify myself as a follower of, in Isaiah, when it talks about at the end, it says that, and to the son of the foreigner. So this is what we are. We are people that were not part of the original covenant, but we are the foreigners. That says those who join themselves, and it specifically talks about those who keep the Sabbath. So I don't know why, but as you can see, the Sabbath seems to be very important. And unfortunately, Christians have forgotten that. It says those who keep the Sabbath and who serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It specifically says that God has a place for them there, and that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. Zionism, and this is when he's talking about Zion. So Zion, as you can see, is a house of prayer for all nations. It's definitely not excluding anyone, and it's definitely not a racist term. It's a wonderful term. It's about giving light. It's about giving hope. One thing I love about Jewish people, the way that they understand their faith, is the amount of hope that they have. Is always hope. Like, it's almost like impossible for them to get depressed. They know that light is coming. And it's sometimes we need to be reminded that if you believe in the Christian scripture, it says that three things remain: love and faith, which is something that we Christians tend to preach a lot. But it also specifically talks about hope. So we need to make sure that in everything that we do and the way that we even express ourselves, make sure that hope is right at the center.
And there you have it, folks. I need to say nothing else. Bravo, Ruth. Bravo. Yes, we are right there with you. That is beautiful. We have so much to be grateful for from the Jewish people and from the Jewish faith. So thank you again. It was marvelous to be with you, my friend. Blessings to you in Europe, and hopefully one day we can connect when we're able to travel back together. So thank you for joining us here on Just Among Friends, another episode with Ruth Isaac with the Shema Institute out of Brussels, Belgium, and the work she's doing for the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Mike Isley with Texans for Israel, Ian Stacy with Texans for a Safe Israel, and myself, Lori Hines, with the Taste of Israel. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great day. Take care.